10. Restricted abandoned places. Baikonur Cosmodrome. Before the end of the Cold War, the USSR tried to once again beat America in the space race. Things weren't working out so well for them, and in the late 80s, they tested 2 space shuttles that were very similar to NASA's. In present-day Kazakhstan, you can travel near the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Located near the Cosmodrome is the graveyard for the 2 failed space shuttles. The place has not been touched in ages by anything other than wild animals. Only one of the shuttles was ever flown, and in these pictures, you can clearly see the similarities between NASA's shuttles and the Buran space shuttle. After the fall of the Soviet Union, the Baikonur Cosmodrome was left to the elements, and only a select few are lucky or brave enough to see the forgotten sight. Number 9. Varosha Famagusta. Varosha is the suburb of the city of Famagusta, located in Cyprus. The beachfront suburb was once a great tourist spot, and in reality, during the 70s, Famagusta was one of the #1 spots for tourists all over the world. So what happened? The Turkish invasion of Cyprus in 1974 is responsible for the destruction of this community. The Turkish and Cypriot army clashed in Famagusta, and the Varosha suburb remains under Turkish control to this day. No one is allowed in except for the Turkish army. There have been talks and negotiations, but it seems like the almost 40,000 people that lost their homes will never be able to return. The whole place is falling apart, and soon buildings will start crumbling. Number 8. Pripyat. At this point, there is not that many people in the world who don't know about Pripyat. It was the city created for the workers in the nearby Chernobyl power plant. After the 1986 Chernobyl disaster, the town was evacuated and completely closed off. It is arguably the worst nuclear plant disaster in history, with only Fukushima Daiichi being comparable. The town of Pripyat grew to a population of about 50,000 people, and all of them were evacuated a day after the meltdown. Nowadays, you can actually visit Pripyat only with a guided tour, and the once deadly doses of radiation have substantially gone down. The place cannot be described without mentioning the words creepy and unsettling, and the pictures of the community children's park prove this. Number 7. The Detroit, Michigan Central Station. When construction of the Michigan Central Railroad Station was completed in 1914, it was the tallest rail station in the world. It was designed by the same company that created the glorious Grand Central Terminal in New York City. At its peak use in 1914, there were more than 200 trains leaving the station each day. But during the Great Depression, business slowed down to a crawl. And after that, the station was never able to bounce back up to its former glory. The personal automobile took over the train as the primary transport for families, and nowadays, the building is nothing more than a shell of memories. There have been many suggestions about future uses of the building, but none have come to fruition. For now, it will remain boarded up and protected by local mall cops. Number 6. North Brother Island. If you live in New York City, you might have seen this island before. It is located between the Bronx and Rikers Island, and it is definitely off limits. The island has a long and sad history as a quarantine zone dating back to the 1880s, when a hospital dedicated to smallpox was built. The most famous patient on the island is without a doubt Typhoid Mary, the first human in the US to be identified as an asymptomatic carrier of typhoid fever. The remains of the quarantine hospital still stand strong, but the island has been taken over by dense brush and wildlife. Trivia time. In 1904, a tragedy struck the island. Do you know what it was? It will be revealed by the end of the video. Number 5. The 1936 Olympic Village. Regarded as the most infamous Olympic Games in history, the site of the 1936 Nazi Games in Berlin has been left to the elements. The people of Berlin want nothing to do with it. Maybe because it was connected to World War II, or maybe because it was under Soviet control for decades. There are certainly many factors at play here. This is the oldest Olympic village that has any hope of being restored to its former glory, but it will be an almost impossible feat since no one wants to donate money towards the cause. Number 4. The Maunsell Sea Forts. These haunting sea forts are located in the Thames estuary, or where the river meets the sea, and were built during World War II. They were part of England's defense system and served their purpose until the late 50s. After that, some of the forts were the location of a few pirate radio stations. And after it was all said and done, the buildings were deemed unsafe, and the general public has been severely restricted in visiting them. Perhaps you have heard of the Principality of Sealand. It is the micronation that has claimed the Rough Tower Fort, and it has been hailed and labeled as the smallest country in the world. But it is not recognized by any other nation or government. And considering it has a constant population of 0, you can see why. Number 3. Holy Land, USA. With a name like Holy Land, USA, you would expect something a bit more holy. This place falls into the other holy section. Yeah, that one. 56 years ago, the biblical theme park was built in Waterbury, Connecticut. It was a place for anyone to experience the sights of Jerusalem, the Garden of Eden, and even Bethlehem. Alas, the park was closed down for renovation during the 80s, and it never opened back up again. A group of nuns was put in charge of the place, but they could not keep up with the upkeep. The place is restricted in a way since it's still private property, but inviting front gates offer entry to anyone who dares to go. The park has turned into a very creepy place, especially at night. Number 2. Six Flags Jazzland. Jazzland was a fully operational park that was permanently shut down after Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. It is now considered as standing but not operational. And with absolutely every plan of reopening failing, this Six Flags location is a prime urban exploration spot. The worst you will have to deal with is lazy security guards, and the fact that the whole place can be considered a giant death trap. In 2013, the movie Percy Jackson's Sea Monsters filmed on location at the park, and many other studios followed their lead, the most famous of them being Jurassic World. And now for number 1, but first, the answer to our question. On June 15, 1904, P.S. General Slocum, a passenger steamboat, caught on fire near the North Brother Island, and bodies from the ship littered the coast. In total, 1,021 people died, and 321 survived to tell the tale. The Buzluja Monument. When looking at this massive saucer-shaped building, it isn't hard to believe that it was built during the height of brutalism architecture in the 70s. The monument was commissioned by the Bulgarian Communist Party, and it officially opened in 1981. And unfortunately, it closed down not even 10 years later with the fall of communism in the country. After it was abandoned, no one really cared for it at all. The building fell into complete disarray and is littered with graffiti and broken glass. And yet, there is something that attracts many urban explorers to this place. The front doors have been chained up for a long time, but that really hasn't stopped anyone that wants to see the inside of the building. Roman Robroek, an urban photographer from the Netherlands, captured the spirit of the building perfectly during his trip. The larger-than-life monument towers over the silhouette of a man who is trying to make out the ominous red letters above the front door.